Le Jardin des Tuileries by Oscar Wilde. This winter air is keen and cold this winter sun, but round my chair the children run, like little things of dancing gold. Sometimes about the painted kiosk the mimic soldiers strut and stride, sometimes the blue-eyed brigands hide in the bleak tangles of the bosque. And sometimes while the old nurse cons her book they steal across the square, and launch their paper in navies where huge Triton writhes in greenish bronze. And now in mimic flight they flee, and now they rush, a boisterous band, and tiny hand on tiny hand climb up the black and leafless tree. Ah, cruel tree, if I were you, and children climbed me for their sake, though it be winter I would break into spring blossoms white and blue. The End. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at 𝔖𝔩𝔢𝔩𝔢𝔡.usf.edu. Lift Every Voice and Sing by James Weldon Johnson. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high as the listening skies, let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed? We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. The End. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
The Line Storm Song by Robert Frost. The line storm clouds fly tattered and swift, the road is forlorn all day, where a myriad snowy quartz stones lift, and the hoofprints vanish away. The roadside flowers, too wet for the bee, expend their bloom in vain. Come over the hills and far with me, and be my love in the rain. The birds have less to say for themselves, in the wood world's torn despair, than now these numberless years the elves, although they are no less there. All song of the woods is crushed like some wild, easily shattered rose. Come, be my love in the wet woods, come, where the boughs rain when it blows. There is the gale to urge behind, and brute are singing down, and the shallow waters aflutter with wind, from which to gather your gown. What matter if we go clear to the west, and come not through dry shod? For wilding brooch shall wet your breast, the rain-fresh goldenrod. Oh, never this whelming east wind swells, but it seems like the sea's return to the ancient lands where it left the shells before the age of the fern. And it seems to like the time when after doubt our love came back amain. Oh, come forth into the storm and rout, and be my love in the rain. Read by David Russell for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
Meddlesome Mattie by Anne and Jane Taylor. One ugly trick has often spoiled the sweetest and the best. Matilda, though a pleasant child, one grievous fault possessed, which like a cloud before the skies hid all her better qualities. Sometimes she'd lift the teapot lid to peep at what was in it, or tilt the kettle if you did but turn your back a minute, In vain you told her not to touch, her trick of meddling grew so much. Her grandmamma went out one day, and by mistake she laid her spectacles and snuff-box gay too near the little maid. Ah, well, thought she, I'll try them on as soon as grandmamma is gone. Forthwith she placed upon her nose the glasses large and wide, and looking round, as I supposed, the snuff-box too she spied. Oh, what a pretty box is that! I'll open it, said little Mat. I know that grandmamma would say, don't meddle with it, dear, but then she's far enough away, and no one else is near. Besides, what can there be amiss in opening such a box as this? So thumb and finger went to work to move the stubborn lid, and presently a mighty jerk the mighty mischief did. For all at once, ah, woeful case, the snuff came puffing in her face. Poor eyes and nose and mouth besides a dismal sight presented. In vain as bitterly she cried, her folly she repented. In vain she ran about for ease, but she could do nothing now but sneeze. She dashed the spectacles away to wipe her tingling eyes, and as in 20 bits they lay, her grandmamma she spies. Hey day, and what's the matter now? Says grandmamma with lifted brow. Matilda, smarting with the pain, and tingling still and sore, made many a promise to refrain from meddling evermore, and 'tis a fact, as I have heard, she ever since has kept her word. The end. Read by Rick Kistner. For Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
Maud Muller, a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier. Maud Muller on a summer's day raked the meadows sweet with hay. Beneath her torn hat glowed the wealth of simple beauty and rustic health. Singing, she wrought in her merry glee the mock-bird echoed from his tree. But when she glanced to the far-off town, white from its hill slope looking down, the sweet song died, and a vague unrest and a nameless longing filled her breast. A wish that she hardly dared to own for something better than she had known. The judge rode slowly down the lane, smoothing his horse's chestnut mane. He drew his bridle in the shade of the apple trees to greet the maid, and ask a draught from the spring that flowed through the meadow across the road. She stooped, where the cool spring bubbled up, and filled for him her small tin cup, and blushed as she gave it, looking down on her feet so bare and her tattered gown. "Thanks," said the judge. A sweeter draught from a fairer hand was never quaffed. He spoke of the grass and flowers and trees, of the singing birds and the humming bees. They talked of the haying, and wondered whether the cloud in the west would bring foul weather. And Maud forgot her briar-torn gown, and her graceful ankles bare and brown, and listened, while a pleasant surprise looked from her long-lashed hazel eyes. At last, like one who for delay seeks a vain excuse, he rode away. Maud Muller looked and sighed, ah me, that I the judge's bride might be. He would dress me up in silks so fine, and praise and toast me at his wine. My father should wear a broadcloth coat, my brother should sail a painted boat. I'd dress my mother so grand and gay, and the baby should have a new toy each day. And I'd feed the hungry and clothe the poor, and all should bless me who left our door. The judge looked back as he climbed the hill, and saw Maud Muller standing still. A form more fair, a face more sweet, ne'er hath it been my lot to meet. And her modest answer and graceful air show her wise and good as she is fair. Would she were mine, and I to-day like her a harvester of hay. No doubtful balance of rights and wrongs, nor weary lawyers with endless tongues, but low of cattle and song of birds, and health and quiet and loving words. But he thought of his sisters proud and cold, and his mother vain of her rank and gold. So closing his heart, the judge rode on, and Maud was left in the field alone. But the lawyers smiled that afternoon when he hummed in court an old love tune, and the young girl mused beside the well till the rain on the unraked clover fell. He wedded a wife of richest dower, who lived for fashion as he for power. Yet oft, in his marble hearth's bright glow, he watched a picture come and go, and sweet Maud Muller's hazel eyes looked out in their innocent surprise. Oft, when the wine in his glass was red, he longed for the wayside well instead, and closed his eyes on his garnished rooms to dream of meadows and clover blooms, and the proud man sighed with a secret pain, ah, that I were free again, free as when I rode that day where the barefoot maiden raked her hay. She wedded a man unlearned and poor, and many children played round her door. but care and sorrow and childbirth pain left their traces on heart and brain. And oft when the summer sun shone hot on the new-mown hay in the meadow lot, and she heard the little spring brook fall over the roadside through the wall, in the shade of the apple tree again she saw a rider draw his rein, and gazing down with timid grace, she felt his pleased eyes read her face. Sometimes her narrow kitchen walls stretched away into stately halls. The weary wheel to a spinnet turned, the tallow candle an astral burned. And for him who sat by the chimney lug, dozing and grumbling o'er pipe and mug, a manly form at her side she saw, and joy was duty and love was law. Then she took up her burden of life again, saying only, it might have been. Alas for maiden, alas for judge, for rich repiner and household drudge. God pity them both, and pity us all, who vainly the dreams of youth recall. For of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been. Ah, well, for us all some sweet hope lies, deeply buried from human eyes, and in the hereafter angels may roll the stone from its grave away. Read by Rick Kistner for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
My Butterfly by Robert Frost. Thine emulous fond flowers are dead too, and the daft sun assaulter, he that frightened thee so oft, is fled or dead. Save only me, nor is it sad to thee. Save only me, there is none left to mourn thee in the fields. The grey grass is not dappled with the snow. Its two banks have not shut upon the river, but it is long ago. It seems forever, since first I saw thee glance with all the dazzling other ones in airy dalliance, precipitate in love, tossed, tangled, world and world above, like a limp rose wreath in a fairy dance, when that was the soft mist of my regret hung not on all the land, and I was glad for thee, and glad for me, I wist. Thou didst not know, who tottered wandering on high, that fate had made thee for the pleasure of the wind, with those great careless wings, nor yet did I. And there were other things. It seemed God let thee flutter from his gentle clasp, then fearful he had let thee win too far beyond him to be gathered in, snatched thee o'er eager with ungentle grasp. Ah! I remember me how once conspiracy was rife against my life. The languor of it and the dreaming fond, surging the grasses dizzied me of thought. The breeze three odors brought, and a gem flower waved in a wand. Then, when I was distraught and could not speak, sighed long full on my cheek, what should that reckless zephyr fling but the wild touch of thy dye-dusty wing? I found that wing broken today, for thou art dead, I said, and the strange birds say. I found it with the withered leaves under the eaves. The end. Read by 𝔂𝔤𝔤𝔤𝔤 for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
Lullaby by Christina Rossetti. Lullaby, oh lullaby, flowers are closed and lambs are sleeping. Lullaby, oh lullaby, stars are up, the moon is peeping. Lullaby, oh lullaby, while the birds are silence keeping. Lullaby, oh lullaby, sleep my baby, fall a-sleeping. Lullaby, oh lullaby. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu. Newton by Lord George Gordon Byron. When Newton saw an apple fall, he found a mode of proving that the earth turned round in a most natural whirl called gravitation, and this is the sole mortal who could grapple since Adam with a fall or with an apple. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at ℅𝔂𝔠𝔞𝔫. The Wind by Christina Rossetti. Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing by. Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing by. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at ℅𝔂𝔠𝔞𝔫.
October by Robert Frost. O hushed October morning mild, thy leaves have ripened to the fall. Tomorrow's wind, if it be wild, should waste them all. The crows above the forest call, tomorrow they may form and go. O hushed October morning mild, begin the hours of this day slow. Make the days seem to us less brief, hearts not averse to being beguiled. Beguile us in the way you know, release one leaf at break of day. At noon release another leaf, one from our trees, one far away. Retard the sun with gentle mists, enchant the land with amethyst. Slow, slow, for the grapes' sake, if they were all whose leaves are already burnt with frost, whose clustered fruit must else be lost, for the grapes' sake along the wall. Read by David Russell for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
When I Hear the Learnt Astronomer by Walt Whitman. When I heard the learnt astronomer, when the proofs, the figures, were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts, the diagrams, to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the learnt astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out I wandered off by myself, in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. The End. Read by Amanda Bernstein for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
Piping Down the Valleys Wild by William Blake. Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee, on a cloud I saw a child, and he laughing said to me, "Pipe a song about a lamb." So I piped with merry cheer. "Piper, pipe that song again." So I piped, he wept to hear. "Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe, sing thy songs of happy cheer." So I sang the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. "Piper, sit thee down and write in a book that all may read." So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed. And I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs, every child may joy to hear. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu. The Way to Be Happy. How pleasant it is at the end of the day, no follies to have to repent, but reflect on the past and be able to say, my time has been properly spent. When I've done all my business with patience and care, and been good and obliging and kind, I lie on my pillow and sleep away there with a happy and peaceable mind. Instead of all this, if it must be confessed, that I careless and idle have been, I lie down as usual and go to my rest, but feel discontented within. Then as I dislike all the trouble I've had, in future I'll try to prevent it, for I never am naughty without being sad, or good without being contented. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu. The Violet by Anne and Jane Taylor. Down in a green and shady bed a modest violet grew. Its stalk was bent, it hung its head, as if to hide from view. And yet it was a lovely flower, its color bright and fair. It might have graced a rosy bower instead of hiding there. Yet there it was, content to bloom, in modest tints arrayed, and there diffused a sweet perfume within the silent shade. Then let me to the valley go, this pretty flower to see, that I may also learn to grow in sweet humility. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu. The Rivulet by Lucy Larcom. Run, little rivulet, run, summer is fairly begun. Bear to the meadow the hymn of the pines and the echo that rings where the waterfall shines. Run, little rivulet, run. Run, little rivulet, run, sing to the fields of the sun, that wavers in emerald, shimmers in gold, where you glide from your rocky ravine crystal cold. Run, little rivulet, run. Run, little rivulet, run, sing of the flowers every one, of the delicate harebell and violet blue, of the red mountain rosebud all dripping with dew. Run, little rivulet, run. Run, little rivulet, run, carry the perfume you won, from the lily that woke when the morning was gray to the white waiting moonbeam adrift on the bay. Run, little rivulet, run. Run, little rivulet, run, stay not till summer is done. Carry the city, the mountain bird's glee, carry the joy of the hills to the sea. Run, little rivulet, run. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go, on the web at ℅𝔞𝔫𝔫𝔞𝔥.usf.edu. The Sisters by Christina Rossetti. Sing me a song, what shall I sing? Three merry sisters dancing in a ring, light and fleet upon their feet as birds upon the wing. Tell me a tale, what shall I tell? Two mournful sisters and a tolling knell, tolling ding and tolling dong, ding dong bell. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go, on the web at ℅𝔞𝔫𝔫𝔞𝔥.usf.edu. The Star by Anne and Jane Taylor. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle, all the night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go, if you did not twinkle so. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. As your bright and tiny spark lights the traveler in the dark, though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Read by Lorraine Montgomery for Lit to Go, on the web at ℅𝔞𝔫𝔫𝔞𝔥.usf.edu.
Stanzas for the Times by John Greenleaf Whittier. Is this the land our fathers loved, the freedom which they toiled to win? Is this the soil whereon they moved? Are these the graves they slumber in? Are we the sons by whom are borne the mantles which the dead have worn? And shall we crouch above these graves with craven soul and fettered lip, yoke in with marked and branded slaves, and tremble at the driver's whip, bend to the earth our pliant knees, and speak but as our masters please? Shall outraged nature cease to feel? Shall mercy's tears no longer flow? Shall ruffian threats of cord and steel, the dungeon's gloom, the assassin's blow, turn back the spirit roused to save the truth, our country, and the slave? Of human skulls that shrine was made, round which the priests of Mexico before their loathsome idol prayed. Is freedom's altar fashioned so? And must we yield to freedom's God as offering meet the Negro's blood? Shall tongue be mute when deeds are wrought which well might shame extremist hell? Shall free men lock the indignant thought? Shall pity's bosom cease to swell? Shall honor bleed? Shall truth succumb? Shall pen and press and soul be dumb? No. By each spot of haunted ground where freedom weeps her children's fall, by Plymouth's rock and Bunker's mound, by Griswold's stained and shattered wall, by Warren's ghost, by Langdon's shade, by all the memories of our dead, by their enlarging souls which burst, the bands and fetters round them set, by the free pilgrim spirit nursed within our inmost bosoms yet, by all above, around, below, be ours the indignant answer, no. No, guided by our country's laws, for truth and right and suffering man, be ours to strive in freedom's cause, as Christians may, as free men can, still pouring on unwilling ears that truth oppression only fears. What? Shall we guard our neighbour still, while woman shrieks beneath his rod, and while he tramples down at will the image of a common God? Shall watch and ward be round him set of northern nerve and bayonet? And shall we know and share with him the danger and the growing shame, and see our freedom's light grow dim, which should have filled the world with flame, and writhing feel where'er we turn a world's reproach around us burn? Is't not enough that this is born, and ask our haughty neighbours more? Must fetters which his slaves have worn clank round the Yankee farmer's door? Must he be told beside his plough what he must speak, and when, and how? Must he be told his freedom stands on slavery's dark foundations strong, on breaking hearts and fettered hands, on robbery and crime and wrong, that all his fathers taught is vain, that freedom's emblem is the chain? Its life, its soul, from slavery drawn, false, foul, profane, go teach us well of holy truth from falsehood born, of heaven refreshed by airs from hell, of virtue in the arms of vice, of demons planting paradise. Rail on then, brethren of the South, ye shall not hear the truth the less. No seal is on the Yankee's mouth, no fetter on the Yankee's press. From our green mountains to the sea, one voice shall thunder, we are free. Read by Rick Kistner for Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu. Snowbound, A Winter Idyll by John Greenleaf Whittier. To the memory of the household it describes, this poem is dedicated by the author. As the spirit of darkness be stronger in the dark, so good spirits which be angels of light are augmented not only by the divine light of the sun, but also by our common wood fire. And as the celestial fire drives away dark spirits, so also this our fire of wood doth the same. Announced by all the trumpets of the sky arrives the snow, and driving o'er the fields seems nowhere to alight. The whited air hides hills and woods, the river and the heaven, and veils the farmhouse at the garden's end. The sled and traveller stopped, the courier's feet delayed, all friends shut out, the housemates sit around the radiant fireplace, enclosed in a tumultuous privacy of storm. Emerson, The Snowstorm. The sun that brief December day rose cheerless over hills of grey, and darkly circled gave at noon a sadder light than waning moon, slow tracing down the thickening sky its mute and ominous prophecy. A portent seeming less than threat, it sank from sight before it set. A chill no coat, however stout, of homespun stuff could quite shut out. A hard, dull bitterness of cold that checked mid-vein the circling race of lifeblood in the sharpened face. The coming of the snowstorm told. The wind blew east, we heard the roar of ocean on its wintry shore, and felt the strong pulse throbbing there beat with low rhythm our inland air. Meanwhile we did our nightly chores, brought in the wood from out the doors, littered the stalls, and from the mows raked down the herd's grass for the cows, heard the horses whinnying for his corn, and sharply clashing, horn on horn, impatient down the stanchion rows, the cattle shake their walnut boughs. While, peering from his early perch upon the scaffold's pole of birch, the cock, his crested helmet bent, and down his querulous challenge sent. Unwarmed by any sunset light, the grey day darkened into night, a night made hoary with the swarm and whirl dance of the blinding storm, as zigzag wavering to and fro crossed and recrossed the winged snow. And ere the early bedtime came, the white drift piled the window frame, and through the glass the clothes-line posts looked in like tall and sheeted ghosts. The old familiar sights of ours took marvellous shapes, strange domes and towers, rose up where a sty or corn-crib stood, or garden wall or belt of wood. A smooth white mound the brush-pile showed, a fenceless drift what once was road. The bridle post an old man sat with loose-flung coat and high-cocked hat. The well-curb had a Chinese roof, and even the long sweep high aloof in its slant splendor seemed to tell of Pisa's leaning miracle. A prompt, decisive man, no breath our father wasted. Boys, a path! Well pleased, for when did farmer boy count such a summons less than joy? Our buskins on our feet we drew, with mittened hands and caps drawn low, to guard our necks and ears from snow. We cut the solid whiteness through, and where the drift was deepest, made a tunnel walled and overlaid with dazzling crystal. We had read of rare Aladdin's wondrous cave, and to our own his name we gave. With many a wish the luck were ours, to test his lamp's supernatural powers. We reached the barn with merry din, and roused the prisoned brutes within. The old horse thrust his long head out, and grave with wonder gazed about. The cock his lusty greeting said, and forth his speckled harem led. The oxen lashed their tails unhooked, and mild reproach of hunger looked. The horned patriarch of the sheep, like Egypt's Ammon roused from sleep, shook his sage head with gesture mute, and emphasized with stamp of foot. All day the gusty north wind bore the loosening drift its breath before. Low circling round its southern zone, the sun through dazzling snow mist shone. No church bell lent its Christian tone to the savage air. No social smoke curled over woods of snow-hung oak. A solitude made more intense by dreary-voiced elements. The shrieking of the mindless wind, the moaning tree boughs swaying blind, and on the glass the unmeaning beat of ghostly fingertips of sleet. Beyond the circle of our hearth, no welcome sound of toil or mirth. Unbound this spell, and testified of human life and thought outside. We minded that the sharpest ear the buried brooklet could not hear, the music of whose liquid lip had been to us companionship, and in our lonely life had grown to have an almost human tone. As night drew on, and from the crest of wooded knolls that ridged the west, the sun, a snow-blown traveller, sank from sight beneath the smothering bank. We piled with care our nightly stack of wood against the chimney back. The oaken log, green, huge, and thick, and on its top the stout-backed stick, the knotty forestick laid apart and filled between with curious art. The ragged brush then hovering near, we watched the first red blaze appear, heard the sharp crackle, caught the gleam, on white-washed wall and sagging beam, until the old rude furnished room burst flower-like into rosy bloom, while radiant with a mimic flame outside the sparkling drift became, and through the bare bowed lilac tree our own warm hearth seemed blazing free. The crane and pendants trammels showed, the Turks' heads on the andirons glowed, while childish fancy, prompt to tell the meaning of the miracle, whispered the old rhyme, under the tree, when fire outdoors burns merrily, there the witches are making tea. The moon above the eastern wood shone at its full, the hill range stood transfigured in the silver flood, its blown snows flashing cold and keen, dead white, save where some sharp ravine took shadow or the sombre green of hemlocks turned to pitchy black against the whiteness at their back, for such a world and such a night, most fitting that unwarming light, which only seemed, where'er it fell, to make the coldness visible. Shut in from all the world without, we sat, the clean, winged hearth about, content to let the north wind roar in baffled rage at pane and door, while the red logs before us beat the frost line back with tropic heat. And ever, when a louder blast shook beam and rafter as it passed, the merrier up its roaring draught, the great throat of the chimney laughed. The house-dog on his paws outspread laid to the fire his drowsy head. The cat's dark silhouette on the wall a couchant tiger's seemed to fall, and for the winter fireside meat, between the andiron's straddling feet, the mug of cider simmered slow, the apples sputtered in a row, and close at hand the basket stood with nuts from brown October's wood. What matter how the night behaved? What matter how the north wind raved? Blow high, blow low, not all its snow could quench our hearth's ruddy fire glow. Oh, time and change with hair as grey as was my sire's that winter day, how strange it seems with so much gone of life and love to still live on. Ah, brother, only I and thou are left of all that circle now. The dear home faces whereupon that fitful firelight paled and shone, henceforward listen as we will, the voices of that hearth are still. Look where we may, the wide earth o'er, those lighted faces smile no more. We tread the paths their feet have worn, we sit beneath their orchard trees, we hear like them the hum of bees, and rustle of the bladed corn. We turn the pages that they read, their written words we linger o'er, but in the sun they cast no shade. No voice is heard, no sign is made, no step is on the conscious floor. Yet love will dream and faith will trust, since he who knows our need is just, that somehow, somewhere meet we must. Alas for him who never sees the stars shine through his cypress trees, who hopeless lays his dead away, nor looks to see the breaking day across the mournful marbles play, who hath not learned in hours of faith the truth to flesh and sense unknown, that life is ever lord of death and love can never lose its own. We sped the time with stories old, wrought puzzles out and riddles told, or stammered from our schoolbook lore the chief of Gambia's golden shore. How often since, when all the land was clay in slavery's shaping hand, as if a far-blown trumpet stirred the languorous, sin-sick air I heard, does not the voice of reason cry, claim the first right which nature gave, from the red scourge of bondage to fly, nor deign to live a burdened slave? Our father rode against his ride on Memphragog's wooded side, sat down again to moose and samp, in trapper's hut and Indian camp, lived all the old idyllic ease beneath St. Francois's hemlock trees. Again for him the moonlight shone on Norman cap and bodiced zone. Again he heard the violin play which led the village dance away, and mingled in its merry whirl the grand dame and the laughing girl. Or, nearer home, our steps he led where Salisbury's level marshes spread, mile wide as flied the laden bee, where merry mowers, hale and strong, swept scythe on scythe their swaths along. The low green prairies of the sea, we shared the fishing off Boar's Head, and round the rocky isle of shoals, the hake broil on the driftwood coals, the chowder on the sand beach made, dipped by the hungry steaming hot with spoons of clamshell from the pot. We heard the tales of witchcraft old, and dream and sign and marvel told to sleepy listeners as they lay stretched idly on the salted hay, adrift along the winding shores when favouring breezes deigned to blow the square sail off the gundelow, and idle lay the useless oars. Our mother, while she turned her wheel, or run the new-knit stocking heel, told how the Indian hordes came down at midnight on Concheco town, and how her own great-uncle bore his cruel scalp mark to fourscore, recalling in her fitting phrase, so rich and picturesque and free, the common unrhymed poetry of simple life and country ways, the story of her early days. She made us welcome to her home, old hearths grew wide to give us room. We stole with her a frightened look at the grey wizard's conjuring book, the fame whereof went far and wide through all the simple countryside. We heard the hawks at twilight play, the boat-horn on Piscataqua, the loon's weird laughter far away. We fished her little trout brook, knew what flowers in wood and meadow grew, what sunny hillsides autumn brown she climbed to shake the ripe nuts down, saw where in sheltered cove and bay the duck's black squadron anchored lay, and heard the wild geese calling loud beneath the grey November cloud. Then haply, with a look more grave and soberer tone, some tale she gave from painful Sewell's ancient tome, beloved in every Quaker home, of faith fire-winged by martyrdom, of Chalkley's journal old and quaint, gentlest of skippers, rare sea-saint, who when the dreary calms prevailed, and water-butt and bread-cask failed, and cruel hungry eyes pursued his portly presence mad for food, with dark hints muttered under breath of casting lots for life or death, offered, if heaven withheld supplies, to be himself the sacrifice. Then suddenly, as if to save the good man from his living grave, a ripple on the water grew, a school of porpoise flashed in view. "Take, eat," he said, "and be content. These fishes in my stead are sent by him who gave the tangled ram to spare the child of Abraham." Our uncle, innocent of books, was rich in lore of fields and brooks. The ancient teachers never dumb of nature's unhoused lyceum. In moons and tides and weatherwise he read the clouds as prophecies, and foul or fair could well divine by many an occult hint and sign, holding the cunning warded keys to all the woodcraft mysteries. Himself to nature's heart so near that all her voices in his ear, of beast or bird, had meanings clear, like Apollonius of old, who knew the tales the sparrows told, or Hermes, who interpreted what the sage cranes of Nilus said, a simple, guileless, childlike man, content to live where life began, strong only on his native grounds, the little world of sights and sounds, whose girdle was the parish bounds, whereof his fondly partial pride the common features magnified. As Surrey hills to mountains grew in white of Selborne's loving view, he told how teal and loon he shot, and how the eagle's eggs he got, the feats on pond and river done, the prodigies of rod and gun, till, warming with the tales he told, forgotten was the outside cold, the bitter wind unheeded blew, from ripening corn the pigeons flew, the partridge drummed, ere the wood, the mink, went fishing down the river brink. The woodchuck like a hermit grey peered from the doorway of his cell, the muskrat plied the mason's trade, and tier by tier his mud walls laid, and from the shagbark overhead the grizzled squirrel dropped his shell. Next the dear ant, whose smile of cheer and voice in dreams I see and hear, the sweetest woman ever fate perverse denied a household mate, who, lonely, homeless, not the less found peace in love's unselfishness, and welcome wheresoe'er she went, a calm and gracious element, whose presence seemed the sweet income and womanly atmosphere of home, called up her girlhood memories, the huskings and the Applebees, the sleigh rides and the summer sails, weaving through all the poor details and homespun warp of circumstance a golden woof thread of romance. For well she kept her genial mood and simple faith of maidenhood. Before her still a cloudland lay, the mirage loomed across her way. The morning dew that dries so soon with others glistened at her noon. Through years of toil and soil and care, from glossy tress to thin grey hair, all unprofaned she held apart the virgin fancies of the heart. Be shame to him of woman born, who hath for such but thought of scorn. There, too, our elder sister plied her evening task to stand beside, a full, rich nature, free to trust, truthful and almost sternly just, impulsive, earnest, prompt to act, and make her generous thought a fact, keeping with many a light disguise the secret of self-sacrifice. O, heart sore tried, thou hast the best that heaven itself could give thee, rest. Rest from all bitter thoughts and things. How many a poor one's blessings went with thee beneath the low green tent, whose curtain never outward swings. As one who held herself apart of all she saw, and let her heart against the household bosom lean upon the motley braided mat, our youngest and our dearest sat, lifting her large, sweet, asking eyes, now bathed in the unfading green and holy peace of paradise. Oh, looking from some heavenly hill, or from the shade of saintly palms, or silver reach of river calms, do those large eyes behold me still? With me one little year ago, the chill weight of the winter snow for months upon her grave has lain. And now, when summer south winds blow, and briar and harebell bloom again, I tread the pleasant paths we trod, I see the violet-sprinkled sod, whereon she leaned, too frail and weak, the hillside flowers she loved to seek, yet following me where'er I went with dark eyes full of love's content. The birds are glad, the briar rose fills the air with sweetness, all the hills stretch green to June's unclouded sky, but still I wait with ear and eye for something gone which should be nigh. A loss in all familiar things, in flower that blooms and bird that sings, and yet, dear heart, remembering thee, am I not richer than of old? Safe in thy immortality, what change can reach the wealth I hold? What chance can mar the pearl and gold thy love hath left in trust with me? And while in life's late afternoon, where cool and long the shadows grow, I walk to meet the night that soon shall shape and shadow overflow. I cannot feel that thou art far, since near at need the angels are. And when the sunset gates unbar, shall I not see thee waiting stand, and white against the evening star, the welcome of thy beckoning hand? Brisk wielder of the birch and rule, the master of the local school, held at the fire his favourite place, its warm glow lit a laughing face, fresh-hued and fair, where scarce appeared the uncertain prophecy of beard. He teased the mitten-blinded cat, played crosspins on my uncle's hat, sang songs, and told us what befalls in classic Dartmouth's college halls. Born the wild northern hills among, from whence his yeoman father wrung, by patient toil, subsistence scant, not competence and yet not want, he early gained the power to pay his cheerful self-reliant way, could doff at ease his scholar's gown to peddle wares from town to town, or through the long vacations reach, in lonely lowland districts teach, where all the droll experience found at stranger hearths in boarding round, the moonlit skater's keen delight, the sleigh drive through the frosty night, the rustic party with its rough accompaniment of blind man's buff, and whirling plate, and forfeits paid, his winter task a pastime made. Happy the snow-locked homes wherein he tuned his merry violin, or played the athlete in the barn, or held the good dame's widening yarn, or mirth-provoking versions told of classic legends rare and old, wherein the scenes of Greece and Rome had all the commonplace of home. And little seemed at best the odds twixt Yankee peddlers and old gods, where Pindus-born Arachthus took the guise of any gristmill brook, and dread Olympus at his will became a huckleberry hill. A careless boy that night he seemed, but at his desk he had the look and air of one who wisely schemed, and hostage from the future took in trained thought and lore of book. Large-brained, clear-eyed, of such as he shall freedom's young apostles be, who following in war's bloody trail shall every lingering wrong assail. All chains from limb and spirit alike uplift the black and white alike, scatter before their swift advance the darkness and the ignorance, the pride, the lust, the squalid sloth which nurtured treason's monstrous growth, made murder pastime and the hell of prison torture possible. The cruel eye of castle refute, old forms remold and substitute, for slavery's lash the freeman's will, for blind routine wise-handed skill. A schoolhouse plant on every hill, stretching in radiant nerve lines, thence the quick wires of intelligence, till north and south together brought, shall own the same electric thought, in peace a common flag salute, and side by side in labor's free and unresentful revelry, harvest the fields wherein they fought. Another guest that winter night flashed back from lustrous eyes the light unmarked by time, and yet not young. The honeyed music of her tongue and words of meekness scarcely told a nature passionate and bold, strong, self-concentred, spurning guide, its milder features dwarfed beside her unbent will's majestic pride. She sat among us at the test, a not unfeared, half-welcome guest, rebuking with her cultured phrase our homeliness of words and ways. A certain pard-like treacherous grace swayed the lithe limbs and dropped the lash, lent the white teeth their dazzling flash, and under low brows black with light rayed out at times a dangerous light, the sharp heat lightnings of her face presaging ill to him whom fate condemned to share her love or hate. A woman tropical, intense in thought and act, in soul and sense, she blended in like a degree the vixen and the devotee, revealing with each freak of feint the temper of Petruchio's Kate, the raptures of Siena's saint. Her tapering hand and rounded wrist had facile power to form a fist. The warm, dark languish of her eyes was never safe from wrath's surprise. Brows saintly calm, and lips devout, knew every change of scowl and pout, and the sweet voice had notes more high and shrill for social battle cry. Since then, what old cathedral town has missed her pilgrim's staff and gown? What convent gate has held its lock against the challenge of her knock? Through Smyrna's plague-hushed thoroughfares, up sea-set Malta's rocky stair, grave olive slopes of hills that hem thy tombs and shrines, Jerusalem, or, startling on her desert throne, the crazy Queen of Lebanon, with claims fantastic as her own, her tireless feet have held their way, and still, unrestful, bowed and grey, she watches under eastern skies with hope each day renewed and fresh, the Lord's quick coming in the flesh, whereof she dreams and prophesies. Where'er her troubled path may be, the Lord's sweet pity with her go. The outward, wayward life we see, the hidden springs we may not know, nor is it given us to discern what threads the fatal sisters spun, through what ancestral years has run the sorrow with the woman born, what forged her cruel chain of moods, what set her feet in solitudes, and held the love within her mute, what mingled madness in the blood, a lifelong discord and annoy, water of tears with oil of joy, and hid within the folded bud perversities of flower and fruit. It is not ours to separate the tangled skein of will and fate, to show what metes and bounds should stand upon the soul's debatable land, and between choice and providence divide the circle of events. But he who knows our frame is just, merciful, and compassionate, and full of sweet assurances, and hope for all the language is, that he remembereth we are dust. At last the great logs, crumbling low, sent out a dull and duller glow. The bull's eyes watched that hung in view, ticking its weary circuit through, pointed with mutely warning sign its black hand to the hour of 9. That sign the pleasant circle broke. My uncle ceased his pipe to smoke, knocked from its bowl the refuse grey, and laid it tenderly away, then roused himself to safely cover the dull red brands with ashes over. And while with care our mother laid the work aside, her steps she stayed, one moment, seeking to express her grateful sense of happiness, for food and shelter, warmth and health, and love's contentment more than wealth. With simple wishes, not the weak vain prayers which no fulfilment seek, but such as warm the generous heart, or prompt to do with heaven its part, that none might lack that bitter night for bread and clothing, warmth and light. Within our beds we heard the wind that round the gables roared, with now and then a ruder shock, which made our very bedsteads rock. We heard the loosened clapboards tossed, the board nails snapping in the frost, and on us, through the unplastered wall, felt the light sifted snowflakes fall. But sleep stole on as sleep will do, when hearts are light and life is new. Faint and more faint the murmurs grew, till in the summer land of dreams they softened to the sound of streams, low stir of leaves, and dip of oars, and lapsing waves on quiet shores. Next morn we wakened with a shout of merry voices high and clear, and saw the teamsters drawing near to break the drifted highways out. Down the long hillside, treading slow, we saw the half-buried oxen go, shaking the snow from heads uptossed, their straining nostrils white with frost. Before our door the straggling train drew up, and added team to gain. The elders threshed their hands a cold, passed with the cider mug their jokes from lip to lip. The younger folks down the loose snowbanks wrestling rolled, then toiled again the cavalcade o'er windy hill, through clogged ravine, and woodland paths that wound between. Low drooping pine boughs winter weighed, from every barn a team afoot, at every house a new recruit, where, drawn by nature's subtlest law, haply the watchful young men saw sweet doorway pictures of the curls and curious eyes of merry girls, lifting their hands in mock deference against the snowball's compliments, and reading in each missive tossed the charm with Eden never lost. We heard once more the sleigh bells sound, and following where the teamsters led, the wise old doctor went his round, just pausing at our door to say, in the brief autocratic way of one who, prompt at duty's call, was free to urge her claim on all, that some poor neighbour sick abed at night our mother's aid would need, for one in generous thought and deed. What mattered in the sufferer's sight the Quaker matron's inward light, the doctor's mail of Calvin's creed? All hearts confess the saints elect, who twain in faith and love agree, and melt not in an acid sect the Christian pearl of charity. So days went on. A week had passed since the great world was heard from last. The almanac we studied o'er, read and reread our little store of books and pamphlets, scarce a score. One harmless novel, mostly hid from younger eyes, a book forbid, and poetry, or good or bad, a single book was all we had. Where Elwood's meek, drab-skirted muse, a stranger to the heathen 9, sang, with a somewhat nasal whine, the wars of David and the Jews. At last the floundering carrier bore the village paper to our door, lo, broadening outward as we read, to warmer zones the horizon spread. In panoramic length unrolled we saw the marvels that it told. Before us passed the painted creeks, and daft MacGregor on his rage in Costa Rica's Everglades, and up Tegeto's winding slow rode Ypsilanti's Maynard Greeks, a Turk's head at each saddle-bow, welcome to us its week-old news, its corner for the rustic muse, its monthly gauge of snow and rain, its record mingling in a breath, the wedding bell and dirge of death. Jest, anecdote, and lovelorn tale, the latest culprit sent to jail, its hue and cry of stolen and lost, its vendue sales and goods at cost, and traffic calling loud for gain. We felt the stir of hall and street, the pulse of life that round us beat. The chill embargo of the snow was melted in the genial glow. Wide swung again our ice-locked door, and all the world was ours once more. Clasp, angel of the backward look, and folded wings of ashen grey, and voice of echoes far away, the brazen covers of thy book. The weird palimpsest, old and vast, wherein thou hidst the spectral past, where closely mingling pale and glow the characters of joy and woe, the monographs of outlived years, or smile illumed or dim with tears, green hills of life that slope to death, and haunts of home whose vistaed trees shade oft the mournful cypresses with the white amaranths underneath. Even while I look, I can but heed the restless sand's incessant fall, importunate hours that hours succeed, each clamorous with its own sharp need, and duty keeping pace with all. Shut down and clasped with heavy lids, I hear again the voice that bids the dreamer leave his dream midway. For larger hopes and graver fears, life greatens in these later years, the century's aloe flowers today. Yet haply in some lull of life, some truce of God which breaks its strife, the wordling's eyes shall gather dew, dreaming in throngful city ways, of winter joys his boyhood knew, and dear and early friends, the few who yet remain, shall pause to view these Flemish pictures of old days. Sit with me by the homestead hearth, and stretch the hands of memory forth to warm them at the wood fire's blaze. And thanks untraced to lips unknown shall greet me like the odours blown from unseen meadows newly mown, or lilies floating in some pond, wood-fringed, the wayside gaze beyond. The traveller owns the grateful sense of sweetness near, he knows not whence, and pausing, takes with forehead bare the benediction of the air. Read by Rick Kishner. For Lit to Go on the web at fcit.usf.edu.
Specimen of an Induction to a Poem by John Keats. Lo, I must tell a tale of chivalry, for large white plumes are dancing in mine eye, not like the formal crest of latter days, but bending in 1,000 graceful ways, so graceful that it seems no mortal hand, or e'en the touch of Archimago's wand, could charm them into such an attitude, who must think rather that in a playful mood some mountain breeze had turned its chief delight, to show this wonder of its gentle might. Lo, I must tell a tale of chivalry, for while I muse, the lance points slantingly athwart the morning air, some lady sweet, who cannot feel for cold her tender feet, from the worn top of some old battlement, hails it with tears her stout defender sent, and from her own pure self no joy dissembling, wraps round her ample robe with happy trembling. Sometimes, when the good knight his rest would take, it is reflected clearly in a lake, with the young ashen boughs 'gainst which it rests, and the half-seen moistness of linnet's nest. Ah, shall I ever tell its cruelty, when the fire flashes from a warrior's eye, and his tremendous hand is grasping it, and his dark brow for very wrath is knit? Or when his spirit, with more calm intent, leaps to the honours of a tournament, and makes the gazers round about the ring stare at his grandeur of the balancing? No, no, this is far off. Then how shall I revive the dying notes of this minstrelsy, which linger yet about the lone Gothic arches, in dark green ivy among wild larches? How sing the splendour of the revelries, when butts of wine are drunk left to the lees, and that bright lance against the fretted wall, beneath the shade of stately Benerol, is slung with shining cuirass, sword, and shield, where ye may see a spur in bloody field. Light-footed damsels move with gentle paces round the white hall, and show their happy faces, or stand in courtly talk by 5s and 7s, like those fair stars that twinkle in the heavens. Yet must I tell a tale of chivalry, or wherefore comes that knight so proudly by, where more proudly goes that gentle knight, rein in the swelling of his ample might. Spencer, thy brows are arched, open, kind, and come like a clear sunrise to my mind, and always does my heart with pleasure dance, when I think of thy noble countenance, where never yet was aught more earthly seen than the pure freshness of thy laurels green. Therefore, great bard, I not so fearfully call on thy gentle spirit to hover nigh my daring steps, or if thy tender care, thus startled unaware, Be jealous that the foot of other wight should madly follow that bright path of light. Traced by thy loved Libertus he will speak, and tell thee that my prayer is very meek, that I will follow with due reverence, and start in awe at my own strange pretence. Him thou wilt hear, so I will rest in hope, to see wide plains, fair trees, and lawny slope, to mourn the eve, the light, the shade, the flowers, clear streams, smooth lakes, and overlooking towers. The End. Read by David Russell for Lit to Go. Available on the web at fcit.usf.edu.